I think you could still have a big market approach to doing things in a smaller community.
I can't wrap my head around everything that you do.
I like the adrenaline rush that directing gives you.
That's a quarter of a century, everybody.
The band's called Twisted Chrome.
Nobody talks to you about that in journalism school, do they?
I don't think so.
An inside look at the people in front of and behind the cameras at NTV on this episode of Inside NTV.
Welcome to another episode of Inside NTV, where we meet and learn more about the folks on and off camera here at NTV. But this week we have a former NTV employee with us, former sports director Josh Jelden. How are you?
Chris, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming down here. We are in the, not that you can see this, but we're in the conference room, which used to be your office.
It was, yeah, many years ago. It looks very nice with the work they've done to modernize the old space. But yeah, it looks great.
It was the sports director office. So yeah, I got all you were able to close the door and yell obscenities at the wall, right?
There was some of that for sure. Closing the doors and definitely some obscenities that would get shouted out every once in a while. Didn't think we'd get stuff done on time, but we always found a way.
There you go. When did you start here at NTV?
I came aboard, I believe it was either late July or August of 2005.
Okay.
So I was originally hired on, Mark Baumert hired me as a weekend sports anchor. They had kind of just gone through some transition. The guy who was the weekend had moved up to the sports director, so they needed a weekend sports director. I was living in Kansas City at the time doing some freelance videography.
Okay.
And I just thought to myself, I was like, let's give this thing a shot of trying to be in front of the camera. And like, what better place to do it than like kind of where you grew up, right?
Sure.
Just having grown up down the road in Axtell. So I felt like it would be familiar and comfortable to me. I knew the area, knew the names, how to pronounce names of towns and folks that I knew. So I never thought that it would turn into something long term. My initial plan was I just want to put my 2 years in, because you sign a 2-year contract when you first get here. I was like, I want to put my 2 years in. I want to go back somewhere like a big city.
Sure.
Young single guy, you're like, man, I can't see myself staying here a long time. But moved back to Kearney, put in, I believe, right around 40 years here, and then turned that into a longer career in Kearney and just never left. So, but it's been a blessing. I loved every minute of it. I loved the memories, the friendships, and everything that you made along the way.
What point did you become sports director then?
I was pretty quick within, I want to say it was within a year. Our sports director, his name is Sean Bilodeau, he left and took a position. He moved out to Oklahoma to work at a station out there. And as the case with a lot of things here at NTV, a lot of internal promotion. I thought it would work out great. And it was just, to me, it was an opportunity. It's like, oh man, this is going to be really, really exciting, be with the A team Monday through Friday and really kind of work to build that resume tape up a little bit. But it ended up being something where I never left, never pursued another opportunity in television. And it was just a really fun time in my life.
Do you have obviously doing sports is fun, but a lot of work at the same time. I mean, you're shooting all your own stuff, you're editing all your own stuff. Especially for sports. I mean, not that news isn't, but for sports, you guys are running, and your days aren't necessarily 8-hour days.
Wags, I have reminded myself how we defied the laws of physics on some of those nights, sports extra nights. My job now takes me a lot of places through central Nebraska, and I remember thinking to myself, I used to send a person here to get one of their 4 games, and it was like an hour and a half away from the station. I'm like, I don't know how we did that. It was like kind of defied expectation, but we always found a way to get it done. And it might be something where you were going on in 2 minutes and a guy is still getting back and putting his tape in to edit. He would give you something though, and you would get it done. And there were many times where we didn't have the actual stuff we were scheduled to go out and get, but yeah, just the amount of driving, and especially here in central Nebraska, right? I mean, the station itself, it'd be one thing if it was situated in Kearney.
Right.
You know, you could say, okay, I can get Kearney, I can get Axtell, I can get Pleasanton, and be back in Kearney in time. But you got to drive all the way back out here, 15 miles south of Kearney. And so when you add that into the mix, there was a lot of stuff that we went out and got, and I kind of prided ourselves on our reach. I didn't want to just be a guy that covered a 25-mile radius.
Right.
I really wanted to understand that NTV was more than just Kearney. It was more than Grand Island. It was more than Hastings. It was really the small communities that make up the coverage area, and they're the ones that really remember and gave you those compliments and say, hey, we really appreciate you taking the time to come to our town and give us some coverage.
Absolutely, and that still goes on today. At least I think so. One word that you mentioned there that I do want to jump on: tape. We don't do tape anymore. and the reason why I find that something to talk about is now if a guy or a girl goes out and shoots 3 or 4 games, they have their laptop and they can put their card in and everything's much quicker, even though the internet may be spotty in some places. Then you had to shoot everything on tape and get back.
Yeah, so everything we did was, like you said, it was called DVC Pro Tape, and we had 2 tape decks, and you'd have a master tape over here and your field tape that you shot all your video on. You'd have to pop that in, and it was tape to tape editing. It wasn't all this digital nonlinear editing, which is fantastic and much more time friendly, I think, for everyone. But you kind of had to know what you wanted to show out of those plays that you would have or those highlights that you wanted to do. And so it just kind of made it all to the it kind of made it all that more impressive, I guess. Maybe it didn't always look great, but we still got it on, and hopefully we got it right for most of the good chunk of the time.
For us at NTV, high school sports is paramount, I think, and that's what our focus usually is on. However, you're also covering Huskers, you're covering UNK, all that stuff. Is there specifically Huskers? Is there a Husker game, whether it's football or basketball or whatever you might have been to, that sticks out?
One experience that really did stick out, and to me, it was just because I was still pretty young in my career and I hadn't traveled a lot. And so when Nebraska, they were led by a guy named Bill Callahan back then. They flew out to Southern California to play the Trojans of USC, and it was Pete Carroll's team. Now, it was the year after they kind of had their stars, Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush, and that superstar team. But still, just getting to fly out there to Southern California. And the other thing that's kind of funny, we mentioned tape, but this was all really before smartphones too. So like once we landed at LAX, it was all MapQuest notes. I luckily had a coworker with me that could kind of sit in the car and navigate. But if you can imagine 2 guys from central Nebraska landing in Southern California, getting in a rental car with all your gear too, and driving around. I mean, we probably looked like the Beverly Hillbillies driving around there, but no, that was really memorable. Just the atmosphere of the Coliseum. It was super cool. When I worked here, that was before Nebraska was in the Big Ten too, right? So it was really neat also to go down to some of those Texas schools, see the scope and of their stadiums and just what Texas football meant. I wish I would have gone down a day or 2 early just to do like a Texas high school football game. I thought that would have been really neat, but never had that opportunity. But nonetheless, some of those stadiums, Kyle Field, Texas A&M, seeing the Longhorns down there, even Lubbock, Texas Tech was really something. And they each kind of had their own unique atmosphere. But like, if I were to say the one that sticks out, I would say Southern Cal and the Coliseum.
Nice. And you mentioned the Big 12 back then. Back in the old days, the Big 12, you guys, whoever was doing sports, could get in the car and just drive pretty much to every game. Right.
Yeah. We didn't need to fly. I mean, you could drive to Manhattan, you could drive to Lawrence, to Ames, to Boulder. I mean, a lot of, even Stillwater, we drove down to there. Some of the ones that are a little bit further away down in Texas, obviously you need to fly. But yeah, it was a lot of those trips. We would go down on a Friday, come back after the game on a Saturday. So you might get back to the station at 2 or 3 in the morning, but it was again, it was a part of the experience. I mean, it was small market television, and I certainly don't look down on that in any stretch, because like I said, I enjoyed every second of it. It was something. if I would have stayed in the television business, I was going to say, if I can make it at NTV and get all these games and operate on 2 hours of sleep, then the next stop's just going to be all that easier. So,
do you have a specific, maybe a feature story or something that you would have covered outside the norm that sticks out to you?
Sure. I think one very clearly does, and that was when the Ravenna Blue Jays, led by now Kearney High coach Drake Baranek and his dad, the late Paul Baranek, just a terrific guy, terrific gentleman, always treated us with respect, and I just always really admired and respected what he did. But when they went to play the David versus Goliath story, when they went to play Bellevue West, I think it was Bellevue West is the team they played, but they were coming off a Class A state championship, and here you had these small town farm kids that had all played together for I don't even know how many numbers of years they played together, but they had something special, and they thought, hey, we can play with anyone in the state, and we want to prove that. And so they went there, and Coach Baranek let me mic him up that night, and I just remember thinking that was such a neat experience. And they had Bell West on the ropes too, and it looked like they were going to pull it off. Now, ultimately, it didn't end that way, but it's still, what a story just to even be in a game like that. You wouldn't think like a small Class C school would be able to run with the defending Class A state championship, but they proved that. We've all seen the movie Hoosiers, and that's kind of what it felt like. And I just remember, they had Lincoln stations, they had Omaha newspapers coming out to Ravenna, Nebraska to interview that team. And that one was really special, and that's one that will always stick with me.
That's cool. What kind of stories can you share with us about working here at NTV? The people in the room, the hijinks that might go on backstage, and anything that comes to mind that's like, yep, that's an NTV story.
It's just really how close you become with everyone, and it's everyone's working on limited budgets, and we got paid in peanuts. I think they probably fixed that hopefully with new ownership over the years, but you just it was the people you form those friendships with. You sometimes would be at each other's throats, like up until that 10, but once that 10 o'clock show went on and it got done, you just kind of wiped the sweat from your forehead a little bit, and you got done, and then you'd go have fun. I always kind of said NTV felt like my second 4 years of college, because we were all just a bunch of young single guys and gals, and all kind of doing the same thing, and we really formed a good social circle together too. We would have Seth and Colleen, who kind of had moved past that phase. Seth had a young family, Colleen as well, and so and then Kent too. Kent probably be the one that would actually come out and have a cocktail with us every once in a while and a cigar. So no, it was. I think when I think of NTV, that's ultimately what I think of is those friendships. Some of those people I still stay close with today. People that have been in my wedding, and so it was. Just a real neat time. And then just in terms of trying to think of a specific story I could think of, that would be funny, but something that really stuck out, and I think you would probably attest to this, was Seth Denny, always a classic prankster. So it'd be Friday night, sports extra phones are ringing off the hook, right? Let's just say it's football season. And we would have a score taker in here. And sometimes it was a younger kid, and sometimes it was maybe just someone kind of naive to what the sports teams were around. And, you take so many, they start to become, you just write them down, like, okay, and you put them in the system. Well, we get a couple calls every once in a while, like, yeah, I got a real nail biter here tonight for you. And it's, I got Funk 17 and Keen 12. Funk 17, Keen 12. And more times than not, that would run on the ticker. And I think Seth probably was just sitting there laughing to himself when that came on. And surely when we saw that, we just kind of put our heads on our faces. And I think the viewers probably got a kick out of it too. Sometimes they'd like to let you know how bad you screw up. But that was kind of, Seth knew his small towns, and he played to that. So that was kind of a funny, unique story, I'd say, unique to my time at NTV.
I've heard similar with Seth trying to drop a score from Dar.
Dar versus Ong, I'm
there
sure.
You
something
go.
like
something
that.
like that. Speaking of Seth, Colleen, Kent, so you grew up in Axtell.
Yep.
So you're right, like literally a stone's throw pretty much from the station. Did you watch the news growing up?
I did.
So what was it like coming here to the station that you probably watched or watched some at least growing up, and then coming to work with people that might have been on the news, right before you came into this place?
There's a certain reverence to it. When I grew up, you kind of just had an admiration for those people. And I still tell this story now. Randy Bushcutter, one of our councilmen in Kearney, was a sports director back then. I tell him, hey, I remember when I was a young man in Axtell, I came up and I asked for your autograph. And he kind of just laughs at that. He's like, I probably believe it, and I probably did it. But, you had guys like Randy and Bob and of course, Al Zobel. Those are some names that resonated for me growing up. And then when you just came here to realize that you were a part of it, you walked through some of the same halls that other folks did too before. I know you talked to other folks like Matt Schick and Jeff Russo. Those are kind of a couple names on the sports side of things that you didn't realize it at the time where their career paths would take them, but certainly you thought, man, if they could start somewhere like here, just imagine the possibilities. It was pretty special, I think, to realize that you were kind of following in some of those footsteps, but even more so, just like you said, having grown up here and knowing that this was kind of part of your life growing up, especially back then when we were growing up, because we didn't have streaming or even cable for that matter. You had 3 stations to pick from, and so they were kind of have a little bit of local celebrity going for them, and so it was just really neat.
Nice. I have something I need to ask at the very end, but I want to get to a little bit about your family,
right?
Without going too far into private stuff. But at what point did you meet your wife? Was that while you were working here? Or was that a different point? And then we could talk. I believe you have a child. So
yeah. So I met my wife when I was still here.
Okay.
And I think ultimately that was probably one of the reasons why I decided to move on, because she worked at a bank and she was getting up at 6 a.m. to go there. As you know, here working at the night shift, you don't get off when you do your morning sportscasts right after the 10 o'clock.
Yep.
You might not get home, especially driving back until 11:30.
Sure.
And most, I don't know if other people can just go straight to bed, but I'm the type that has to wind down for an hour or two. And so, you'd be going to bed at 1:30 or 2 in the morning sometimes. And so I think I kind of looked at it as I did what I wanted to do, and I kind of looked forward to that next chapter of just kind of having a normal life, 8 to 5, get out of the spotlight for a little bit, just kind of enjoy some of those things that you don't get to. I remember when I first left here, how excited I was just to play like nighttime softball with, and there were some NTV guys too that we, none of us were very good athletes, but we sure had fun doing it. But yeah, so I met my wife here, and it wasn't very much longer after that I took off, and yeah, we've been together. It'll be 13 years,
Nice.
Married, longer than that dating wise, but yeah, we have a son, Andrew, who is just finished kindergarten, and,
Awesome.
and my wife always says that he got some of Dad's personality with just kind of his outgoingness and his social skills. So who knows? Maybe someday we'll have another Jelden walking through these halls.
There you go. We'll have to keep that in mind. Do you have advice for somebody who wants to do sports for TV? Having done it, having been through the ringer, and granted, there's digital stuff now instead of tapes, but a lot of it's still the same. I mean, you're still running and gunning and working long hours some days, longer than other days. But do you have something that you would tell a guy or a girl wanting to get into this business?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, there's opportunities when you're still in college, whether that's a part-time job running studio cameras or running tape, or you don't run tape anymore, but running scripts or whatever that might be. I don't think they have scripts anymore, quite honestly, but I'm an old dinosaur over here.
Running the iPad.
Running the iPad. Thank you, Chris. But no, I would just say get your foot in the door as soon as you can. I know there's been some young folks, even from Axtell, that have come out to work here part-time in the summer that might still be in high school. Just getting that experience is great. Then in sports, one thing that was always just helpful to me, find a mentor. It might be someone that you're shooting video for, or maybe you're not even working in the sports department, but just go pick their mind anytime you can, and try to just learn and be as observant as much as you can, and your opportunity will come. But yeah, I think just getting a mentor in the industry is pretty important. And so that like again, that was helpful to me. Then I think also, as I said too, just realize what a fun time it is. You're never going to be in your 20s again. And when you get to your next step, you'll look back on this and smile. It might really feel like it's really you're really grinding during that time, and you are. I mean, it's a grind out here. Let's not kid ourselves. But it's memories again that you'll look back fondly on, and then just lastly, I'd always say, don't burn any bridges. Just always keep relationships going well, because so much of this business, particularly, is networking and who you know and not necessarily what you know. And so, but yeah, networking and is kind of the name of the game. That's what I always try to tell people if they're trying to get into the business.
Do you mind me asking what you've been up to since you left here?
Yeah, no. So when I left NTV, I went to work for the Kearney Chamber as a membership director, and worked for the wonderful Eunice family for a few years out at their ever-growing campus. And since then, I've been in the federal government, working for Nebraska's senior U.S. Senator Deb Fisher. So been with that for 5 years this month, and just enjoying that a lot.
Covering football and basketball got you prepped for all the road work.
It really has. It really has. In a way, it kind of feels like I'm going back in time a little bit to some of these small towns. But now I actually get to enjoy the small town diners, and you don't have to go through Holders or Kearney to get a value meal at Taco Bell or something on your way back to the station. So I think my heart and my waistline have thanked me since I've left.
There you go.
Left NTV, so.
There you go. Anything else you want to add? I have one more thing, but do you have anything else you'd want to add?
Yeah, no, I just, again, I just look back really fondly on this, and this has kind of been fun just to kind of go back, take a little bit trip down memory lane.
I've been lucky enough to get to know Josh and talk to him several times, and sometimes it's goofy, Facebook, President Wagner stuff, but it's fun. I like getting to, meet good people, which Josh is that, and to know that he was here and did all this stuff. And, before I got here, and I got here into Nebraska in 2007, so I kind of missed you a little. Were you still doing?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
What year did you say?
October of 2007.
2007. So I was still here. I left in 2009.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought, yeah. You, I think, set a standard, though, for sportscasters in the state of Nebraska when it comes to height. So there's a reason we're doing this sitting down.
We, when Dave took my spot, I think that was when I would see people in public. They said, "Is that a requirement? Do you have to be over 6'4", 6'5"?" And it was just coincidence. I mean, Dave put his, they just saw, hey, tall guy followed by a tall guy, but he did great work out here. He still does do great work out here. Another funny thing just about that height is when we're sitting at the anchor desk, and Seth comes up to about my stomach, I think. So, and not a knock on him. He's a normal sized guy. I'm just abnormally sized. But people would always ask, how do you guys always look like you're so level? And I'm like, Seth sits on a box, and that's what it is. So no. But,
there's a Seth Denny pillow roaming around somewhere in the building. I know it exists. I wanted to go put it in the KHOL exhibit at the Nebraska Prairie Museum.
The Broadcasting Hall of Fame. That's where it belongs.
Josh, how tall are you again?
6'6".
6'6". So you and Dave are technically the same, but I feel like if we put you back to back, you're going to get him a tiny bit.
I don't know. I haven't looked kind of up to too many people, and Dave, I think, definitely is one of those guys I do. So it'd come down to probably just a photo finish type of deal.
For some reason, I want to believe you're 6'7", but whatever. Go with whatever you want to do. Josh, thank you so much for coming down here. You got a busy day. You got a busy work ahead of you, but I appreciate getting to come down and visit and chat with you.
Pleasure, man.
We'll have another episode of Inside NTV again next week.